So here we have the G57, the Ginetta, with a naturally aspirated LS3 Chevrolet sourced engine, 6.2 litre, which has been slightly fettled at Ginetta and housed around the monocoque chassis and the push rod suspension. Huge amounts of torque coming from this engine, around 440 foot-pounds of torque. Retails at around £200,000 and quite a beast of a car, to be fair. Lots of power down the straights, huge amounts of downforce, and certainly something to rival the LMP2 cars. So let's see how it goes when we push it to its limit around the Nordschleife, and then I'll share my setup and everything at the end of the video. Okay, so 5 minutes 48 of pure power. So coming up, just lining up, getting ready, getting a feel for the car, pushing the car right from the off really into third gear, smashing it up here through this section, just a heavy breakdown into second gear, nice and tight through that corner out, and just let it run wide up into third gear and just powering through the gears all the way through here now. I'm going to take it right up into sixth gear and then 2 drops down into fourth gear and really try and hug that inside. Just let the car drift wide and it just sort of swings left to right here, and a quick shift down to third and then up into fourth, and then another little drop down to third to hug that right hand curb, and then getting up into fourth gear as soon as you can, back on the power, taking it all the way up. It just runs nice and smoothly through. We've got loads of aero working, a tiny little dab of the brake to keep the front end down there, and then just tuck it in just nice and smoothly through that section. Just let the car run wide and just allow it to run the least line of resistance. So coming into this next stage here, we're going to be heavy on the brake pedal, just as you see the board on the left hand side there, nicely down into third gear, hugging that inside curb, and then up as fast as you can into fourth gear, fifth, and then up into sixth. Just going to be bouncing on the rev limiter as we hit the bottom of here, and then we're going to just follow through into the left hander in sixth gear, tiny little lift into fourth, a little squeeze of the accelerator pedal, then drop down into third, nice and tentative through there on the brake pedal, and then hard on the power as you come out of here, following up into fourth, into fifth, and then we're going to be up into sixth as soon as we're coming around this left hander. Now as soon as we're around the left hander, we're going to think about dropping it into fourth gear, early into fourth, and just really smooth through here in fourth gear, then up into fifth gear. Just dropping down into third gear for this corner, and then following right up into fifth gear through this section. It's just a little lift as you come through the section again, as per in the LMP2 cars, and then back on the power. As soon as you see the curb on the right hand side, heavy on the brake pedal, down into second gear, and then lift off the accelerator, off the brake pedal, just allows the car to swing round nice and smoothly. So as we come into this section, we're going to just drop down into third gear. As soon as we can get on the power, we will do, up into fourth gear, and then just really tentative through the section. It's a really awkward one to carry the speed through. So up into fourth gear, into fifth gear, then we're going to be coming into sixth gear, and then 2 drops down into fourth, and then a final drop into third gear, hugging this right hand curb, and then up into fourth gear as soon as we can. Just allow the car to run nice and freely through this section. Then now hardly any work going through the wheel at all. Just keeping the car nice and smooth through this section. No work to be done at all at the wheel really. Just nice and steady away. Coming into this one, just a nice full throttle through that section, and again full throttle through here. Just let the car run, and then as soon as you see the curb on the left, heavy on the brake pedal, down into second, really hug this inside curb, up into third. The wheels spin a little bit through there, and then 2 drops down into second, hugging that central band really, just trying to keep the momentum through this corner, and then up into third gear, into fourth, and then into fifth. Now as we come into this section, we're going to just drop down nice and early into fourth gear, and then back on the power, just half throttle as we come through this section, and then fully on the powers around this section here, into third gear, and then up into fourth gear as soon as we can, into fifth. Now unlike in the LMP2 cars, we're going to stay in fifth gear through this section, just pushing through really, and then into fourth gear for this one rather than dropping down into third. heavy on the power again, and then just as you think you're going to go up to 5th, you're going to stay in 4th gear, just take a little squeeze on the brake pedal, and then again staying in 4th gear through this section. A little drop down into 3rd gear just allows the car to have more power on the exit. Up into 4th gear, and then a little again drop down into 3rd gear for powering out of this corner. You can take a little bit of curve on the right hand side there, and again just letting the car run smoothly through this section. Tiny dab of the brake pedal as we come over there to keep the front end down into 5th gear, and then heavy on the power. And again through this section we're going to up into 6th, and then a little dab of the brake pedal to pull the car down as we come through this section. And then we're just flat on the power through this section, coming into another tricky section here coming up. A little drop down into 5th, down to 4th, and then into 3rd, and then on the power as soon as we're into 3rd gear for this section, into 4th, and then a scary section through this one, really trying to get the power down, and then up again into 4th gear, into 5th. We're going to stay in 5th through this corner, tiny little left, and then back on the power again. So fully on the power now, getting ready for this long back straight, and just allow the car to just flow freely, let your hands relax a little bit, ready for that final sector. So it's do or die in this section now, just last of the late breakers as you're coming in here. Down into 3rd gear, just a little shift down and then shift down again, and then heavy on the power again. We've done this section time and time again at the start. Tiny little mess up there which cost me up 47, and then that's a 548. Amazed me really, I couldn't believe the time when I saw it. Jesus, where did that extra second come from? Brilliant. So here we are then, let's take a look at the setup. Now if you're thinking about possibly running hard tyres, obviously looking at the track temperature, it's around 101 degrees Fahrenheit, and you really want to be looking at hard tyres at about the 130 degrees. It certainly wouldn't run best on the hard tyre, and I think you get far more performance out of the soft tyre. So we've gone with a soft tyre, running slightly higher tyre pressures at the front just to get some response from the turning, and slightly softer on the rear wing. Obviously we're trying not to let that rear wing step out too much during cornering. Brake pressure again is very personal to how you like your brakes set up, but the brake balance, I've seen other people running it around 54, but for me anything lower than 60 at the front just starts to turn the car too much for how I like the car to handle. So 62 was a good balance for me. Again, just trying to keep the brakes slightly cool but not impact the aero too much. So 20 at the front and 10 at the rear. And like I mentioned before, the amount of torque this car's got, the downforce really doesn't make a huge amount of difference when you're looking at acceleration or top end. The car's got a very short gear ratio, and in real life you can change this between 2 different gearboxes, I believe, and you can set the car to run at about 200 plus miles per hour, but the model that we're driving now does about 182 miles per hour, and you cannot change that at all. So even if you lower the rear wing to 0, you would still only hit 182 miles per hour. So it makes more sense to add downforce at the rear, and especially this front downforce as you go over some of the rises on this circuit, especially in one area where there was a fatal crash years ago with a GT3 car, a Nissan GTR, that actually took off at this particular area, and there was actually a fatality at the circuit in that area. But to try and keep the car down, definitely need the front end, 2 clicks on the front. Moving to the suspension, the cambers, you can't adjust the caster angles, so that's taken out of the equation. And you might find this quite weird really, because I'm running less front camber than I am rear camber, and it's purely just to aid cornering grip really at the rear, so we can get the power down as much as we can whilst we're cornering. The ride height, that's 31, it's a strange number, but that's as low as it goes. And again, the spring rate is as stiff as it's going to go at the front and as stiff as it's going to go at the rear. I always think cars run better quite stiff at the Nordschleife for some reason. Ride height again is just to add some rake on the car to get the underside of the aero package working at the rear. And as we move to the steering ratios, it's probably fairly high for me. I had this down at 7.5 at one point, but it just felt like the car was turning too much, and you was probably getting quite a bit of too much traction, slowing the car through the corner. So I just reduced that. So the higher you go, the more steering you have to put in to get the car to turn. So toe again, we're just trying to get response from the car at the front to get a really good turn in, so adding negative camber and running, I think, quite soft at the front really. I'm not sure how far up that goes, but yeah, it goes a long way up, so I'm running really quite soft at the front end, down at 150, and not too sure at the rears. Again, it runs a heck of a lot harder, but I've opted to run quite a soft anti-roll bar. The dampers for me play a huge part of this setup. Usually it's not particularly the way, and you might be looking at my springs, my slow rebound and my bump and thinking, well, he's got those set up wrong. Well, initially I did increase these. Usually I would sort of be running it somewhere around here, bringing the front down a little bit, and it probably looks something like that. But I really did notice, I'm not sure where they were now, but I really did notice that there was far more grip, and especially at the rear. I was sort of running this, something like this. I'll not say this, but it was just affecting the rear so much. I was losing so much traction from the rear having them set like this, that I brought them, I can't remember where they were now, but I brought them very much in line with each other, which added so much grip at the rear. It really did take me by surprise. And coming to the bump stops, I tried lowering these to around 30, but just seemed to, whenever you're going over some of the bumpy sections, you really did understeer. So certainly something I've learned during this setup about the third bumps, but I think that affects the up and down action of the car. The third bump stop. So moving to the radiator, if you have this set really any lower than 15, I've had the engine blow up at 15 down the back straight, because we're hitting the rev limiter so much. It really does need an extra gear, this, or it needs the different gearbox, but you can't adjust the gearbox at all for this car. You can change the gears in that respect, but it doesn't really offer you anything. It's just like replacing 6th gear to 5th gear really, so you're just losing a gear. You can't really extend the car in any way. And traction control, I'm not using traction control or ABS within my setup. And the engine braking, I did have this at 7 for a while, but just brought it down 2 touches just to add a little bit more engine braking and get the car to turn through the braking phases. Moving to the rear differential, I did choose to add the viscous lock just down at 100. I tried it at 500, but it didn't really seem to benefit the car at all. But for some reason, I left it on 100 Newton meters. I tried the different clutches again, 6 and 8, but didn't really feel that it offered the car anything. And the preload, I again tried this at around 80, but again, I've just settled on these 2 figures. I tried 60 as well, but that didn't particularly seem to add any acceleration out of the corners at all, so settled on these 2 figures, and that's the setup, guys. Hopefully you might be able to come up with something similar to what I've been able to put up there. I'll discard any of those changes. And thanks for watching as always. If you enjoy the channel, if you see anything that's interesting that you like on there, please do hit that subscribe button. And until next time, as always, ciao for now.